Deep in the heart of the Indian jungle, the sun rose over a dense canopy of trees, casting dappled light on the forest floor. The jungle was alive with the calls of monkeys, the rustling of leaves, and the distant roar of Shere Khan, the tiger. It was a world full of danger, but also wonder. One quiet morning, Mother Wolf and Father Wolf rested in their den, watching their cubs play. Suddenly, a shadow fell across the entrance. It was Tabaki, the jackal, creeping up with a sly grin. "There is news," Tabaki said, his voice slippery. "Shere Khan is hunting near your territory."
Father Wolf growled. "Shere Khan has no right to hunt here. The jungle has laws." Tabaki's grin widened. "He says he will take what he wants. He is hunting man." That night, as the wolves prepared to sleep, a faint rustling came from the bushes outside the den. Father Wolf stepped forward cautiously, sniffing the air. From the shadows emerged a small figure, a human baby, toddling unsteadily. His big brown eyes looked around, unafraid. Mother Wolf approached and sniffed the child gently. "A man-cub!" she exclaimed. "How did he come here?" At that moment, a deep growl echoed through the jungle. Shere Khan had arrived.
"That cub is mine," the tiger roared. "Give him to me."
Mother Wolf's eyes flashed with determination. She stood protectively over the man-cub. "The cub belongs to us now. You have no claim here, Shere Khan." Shere Khan snarled, but he knew better than to challenge the wolves in their den. "The man-cub will be mine one day," he growled, before slinking back into the darkness. The pack held a meeting to decide the man-cub's fate. Akela, the wise leader of the wolves, stood tall on the council rock. "The law of the jungle says the pack must speak for the child," he declared. Baloo, the bear, stepped forward. "I will speak for the man-cub," he said. "I will teach him the ways of the jungle." Bagheera, the sleek black panther, also spoke. "I offer my voice as well," he said. "Let him stay." With Baloo and Bagheera's support, the pack agreed to keep the man-cub. Mother Wolf named him Mowgli, which means little frog because of his hairless skin. Years passed, and Mowgli grew strong and clever under the guidance of Baloo and Bagheera. Baloo taught him the laws of the jungle, from respecting the hunting grounds of others to the importance of keeping promises. "Remember, Mowgli," Baloo said one day, "the strength of the pack is the wolf, and the strength of the wolf is the pack." Bagheera, meanwhile, trained Mowgli in the art of stealth and survival. "Walk silently," Bagheera said, demonstrating how to tread without making a sound. "And always keep your senses sharp." Mowgli loved his life in the jungle, but he was not without enemies. Shere Khan had not forgotten the man-cub and waited for the day he could claim him. One day, While wandering near the river, Mowgli heard a rustling in the trees. Suddenly, a troop of mischievous monkeys surrounded him, chattering excitedly. "We want to be wise like you, man-cub," they exclaimed. Before Mowgli could respond, they grabbed him and carried him off into the treetops. The monkeys took Mowgli to the cold lairs, a ruined city deep in the jungle. There they played and teased him, but their antics soon grew tiresome. Mowgli called out for help, and his voice echoed through the ruins. Baloo and Bagheera, who had been searching for him, heard his cry and rushed to his rescue. The battle that followed was fierce. Baloo roared as he swiped at the monkeys with his massive paws, while Bagheera leaped gracefully from tree to tree, scattering the mischievous troop. Just as the fight seemed to be turning in their favor, Kaa, the giant python, slithered into the ruins. His presence sent the monkeys fleeing in terror. "You owe me a favor, man-cub," Kaa said in his slow, hypnotic voice as he helped untangle Mowgli from the vines. Mowgli nodded. "Thank you, Kaa. I won't forget." Safe once more, Mowgli returned to the pack, but his encounter with the monkeys made him realize how vulnerable he could be. "I must become stronger," he said to himself. "If I am to face Shere Khan one day, I must be ready." And so, Mowgli's training with Baloo and Bagheera became even more intense. He climbed higher, ran faster, and learned to fight with the instincts of the jungle. But Shere Khan was also preparing, and the time for their final confrontation was drawing near. As the days passed, the tension in the jungle grew. Shere Khan's presence became more frequent, his roars echoing through the trees as a reminder that he had not forgotten Mowgli. The wolves in the pack whispered nervously, worried that the tiger might challenge their strength. One evening, Bagheera approached Mowgli, his golden eyes serious. "Mowgli, it's time you learned the truth about Shere Khan. He does not simply hate you because you are a man-cub. He fears you." "Fears me?" Mowgli asked, confused. "Yes," Bagheera replied. "Man has power beyond the jungle. Fire, which we call the red flower, is feared by all animals. Shere Khan knows this, and it makes him angry." Baloo joined the conversation, his voice calm but firm. "Mowgli, you must understand. Shere Khan believes you do not belong here. He will never rest until you are gone. You must be ready to defend yourself and the pack." Mowgli nodded, determination in his eyes. "I won't let him harm the pack. I'll do whatever it takes." Bagheera placed a paw on Mowgli's shoulder. "Good. Then we must teach you about fire, the red flower." The next day, Bagheera led Mowgli to the edge of the jungle where the man village lay. Smoke curled from the chimneys, and the scent of cooking fires filled the air. "Do you see that?" Bagheera asked, pointing with his sleek paw. That is the red flower. It is man's greatest strength, and it is the one thing Shere Khan fears. Mowgli watched the distant flames, a mix of curiosity and unease. He had spent his life in the jungle, and the man village felt strange and distant, even though it was a part of who he was. That evening, while sitting by the river, Mowgli thought about what Bagheera had said. He loved the jungle and the creatures who had raised him. It was his home, but he couldn't ignore the fact that he was different. As the moonlight reflected on the water, Kaa the python appeared, his movements slow and deliberate. Thinking deeply, young one? Kaa asked, his voice almost a whisper. Yes, Mowgli replied. How can I protect the jungle when I am not truly one of you? Kaa's eyes glinted in the moonlight. The jungle does not ask where you come from. It only asks what you can give. Remember, strength is not just in the body. It is in the mind and heart. Mowgli pondered Kaa's words as the days turned into weeks. He continued his training with Baloo and Bagheera, learning not only the ways of the jungle, but also how to harness his unique abilities as a man. Meanwhile, Shere Khan grew bolder. He began to taunt the wolves, prowling near their territory and growling threats. The man-cub will not live to see another moon, Shere Khan declared one evening, his voice loud enough for the entire jungle to hear.
Akela, the pack leader, stood firm. The pack protects its own, Shere Khan. You cannot harm Mowgli without facing all of us.
But Akela was growing old, and the younger wolves were restless. Some of them, swayed by Shere Khan's promises, began to question Akela's leadership. One day, a young wolf named Gray Brother approached Mowgli with a worried expression. Mowgli, Gray Brother said, the pack is divided. Some believe Shere Khan's lies and think you are a danger to us. Mowgli's heart sank. I don't want to bring trouble to the pack. What should I do? Stay strong, Gray Brother replied. You have more allies than you think. That night, Mowgli climbed to a high rock overlooking the jungle. He stared at the stars, his thoughts racing. He loved the pack and the life they had given him, but he couldn't ignore the growing threat of Shere Khan. Baloo and Bagheera joined him, their presence comforting. You are not alone, Mowgli, Baloo said. The jungle stands with you. Bagheera nodded. And remember, the red flower is your greatest weapon. Use it wisely. Mowgli took a deep breath, his resolve strengthening. If Shere Khan wants a fight, then I'll give him one. The next day, Mowgli set out with Bagheera to find fire. It was a dangerous mission, as the man village was closely guarded, but Mowgli moved with the stealth and skill of a true jungle creature. As they approached the village, Bagheera whispered, Stay low and quiet. Take only what you need. Mowgli crept forward, his heart pounding. Near the edge of the village, he found a fire pit where glowing embers remained. Using a sturdy branch, he carefully carried a flame back to the jungle. When they returned, Mowgli showed the fire to Baloo, Bagheera, and the wolves who remained loyal to him. "This is the red flower," Mowgli said, holding the flame aloft. "With it, we can protect the jungle from Shere Khan." The wolves gazed at the fire with awe and fear. Even Baloo and Bagheera kept a respectful distance. "Use it wisely, Mowgli," Bagheera cautioned. "Fire is a powerful ally, but it can also destroy." Mowgli nodded. "I will. But this is our chance to end Shere Khan's threat once and for all." As the sun set and darkness enveloped the jungle, the stage was set for the final confrontation. Mowgli stood with Baloo, Bagheera, and his loyal wolves, the fire glowing brightly in his hands. In the distance, Shere Khan's roar echoed, a challenge that reverberated through the trees. Mowgli's voice was steady as he addressed his companions. "Tonight, we fight for the jungle, for our home, and for each other." The jungle fell silent, as if holding its breath. The battle for Mowgli's place in the jungle and the survival of the pack was about to begin. The jungle was eerily quiet as Mowgli and his allies prepared for the fight ahead. The air was thick with tension, and every rustle in the leaves seemed louder than usual. Mowgli stood tall, the flickering flame in his hand casting shadows on his determined face. "Stay close," Bagheera whispered to the wolves. "Shere Khan is cunning and strong. We must be ready for anything." Baloo rumbled in agreement. "And remember, this is not just about strength. It's about standing together. The jungle survives because of unity." Mowgli took a deep breath. "Let's show him that we're not afraid." The sound of snapping twigs signaled Shere Khan's approach. The tiger emerged from the shadows, his amber eyes gleaming with malice. "So, the man-cub has decided to face me," Shere Khan growled, his voice dripping with disdain. "Do you think that flame will save you?" Mowgli held the fire high. "I don't need saving, Shere Khan. I'm here to protect my family and my home." The tiger snarled, pacing in a slow circle around the group. "You don't belong here, man-cub. The jungle is no place for your kind." Bagheera stepped forward, his sleek body coiled with tension. "Mowgli is as much a part of this jungle as any of us, and we stand with him." Shere Khan lunged suddenly, his massive paws striking at the ground near Mowgli. The wolves sprang into action, forming a protective ring around him. Baloo charged forward with a roar, swiping at the tiger with his powerful claws. The fight was fierce and chaotic. Shere Khan's strength and speed were formidable, but the combined efforts of the wolves, Baloo, and Bagheera kept him at bay. Mowgli stayed in the center of the group, holding the fire carefully. He knew that the red flower was their greatest weapon, but he also understood its danger. Wait for the right moment, he told himself. Don't let fear control you. Shere Khan's roars echoed through the jungle as he fought off his attackers. Despite his confidence, the tiger began to realize that this was not the easy victory he had anticipated. You think you can defeat me? Shere Khan growled, his voice laced with fury. I am the king of this jungle. The jungle has no king, Mowgli said firmly, stepping forward with the flame. It belongs to all of us. The sight of the fire made Shere Khan hesitate. He took a step back, his eyes fixed on the glowing flame.
You dare use the red flower against me? The tiger snarled.
Yes, Mowgli replied, because you leave us no choice. Mowgli advanced slowly, the fire held steady in his hand. Shere Khan growled low, his tail flicking nervously. The tiger's bravado began to falter as the flames drew closer. Baloo and Bagheera took the opportunity to flank Shere Khan, cutting off his escape. The wolves howled, their voices ringing out in a united chorus. This is your last chance, Shere Khan, Mowgli said. Leave the jungle and never return. The tiger's eyes darted around, realizing he was surrounded. He let out one final roar of defiance before turning and retreating into the shadows. As Shere Khan's roars faded into the distance, the jungle fell silent. Mowgli lowered the flame, his shoulders relaxing for the first time in hours. We did it, he said softly, looking at Baloo and Bagheera. Baloo let out a deep sigh of relief. You were brave, Mowgli. The jungle is lucky to have you. Bagheera nodded. Shere Khan may return one day, but he knows now that we will not be intimidated.
The wolves gathered around Mowgli, their eyes filled with admiration and respect. For the first time, they saw him not just as a man-cub, but as a true member of the jungle.
The victory was celebrated with howls that echoed through the trees, a declaration that the jungle had stood its ground. Mowgli felt a swell of pride and belonging. He was no longer just the boy who had stumbled into the wolves' den years ago. He was now a leader, a protector, and a part of the jungle's soul. As the night wore on, the group returned to their familiar places. Baloo and Bagheera walked beside Mowgli, their presence reassuring. You've learned much, little brother, Bagheera said, his voice warm. The jungle is not just your home, it is your family. Mowgli smiled, his heart full. And I'll do everything I can to protect it. The days that followed were filled with a renewed sense of peace. Shere Khan's absence was felt throughout the jungle, and the animals moved more freely, unburdened by fear. Mowgli continued his lessons with Baloo and Bagheera, deepening his understanding of the jungle's ways. He also spent more time with the pack, strengthening the bonds that had been tested during the conflict. Unity is what saved us, Mowgli often said, and unity is what will keep the jungle strong. One evening, as the sun set over the treetops, Mowgli sat with his wolf family, watching the stars appear one by one. "You've come a long way, Mowgli," Akela said, his voice filled with pride. "You've proven yourself to the jungle and to us all." Mowgli looked around at the faces of his friends and family. "I couldn't have done it without all of you. The jungle taught me everything I know." As the stars twinkled above, Mowgli felt a deep sense of contentment. The jungle was his home, and he would do whatever it took to protect its harmony and beauty. The jungle had returned to its natural rhythm. The birds sang at dawn, the monkeys chattered in the treetops, and the river flowed gently through the dense forest. Yet something had changed. The animals walked with a renewed sense of peace and trust, knowing the threat of Shere Khan was gone, at least for now. Mowgli spent his days exploring the jungle he loved so dearly. He climbed trees with the skill of a monkey, swam in the cool waters of the river, and ran through the undergrowth with the wolves. Each part of the jungle felt alive to him, a vast and magical world that he called home. One day, while wandering near the edge of the jungle, Mowgli came across a human village. Smoke from cooking fires curled into the sky, and the sound of laughter and conversation drifted through the air. Mowgli hesitated. He had grown up in the jungle, surrounded by animals who loved and protected him. Yet the sight of the village stirred something in him, a curiosity about the world of men. Bagheera, who had been following quietly, stepped forward. "Do you wonder about them, little brother?" he asked. "Yes," Mowgli admitted. "They are like me, but also not like me. I don't know if I belong there." Bagheera's golden eyes softened. "The jungle will always be your home, Mowgli, but it is also wise to know where you come from. You are part of both worlds." Baloo arrived, his heavy steps rustling the leaves. "What's this talk of villages?" the bear asked, his voice gruff but kind. "Mowgli is curious," Bagheera explained. Baloo scratched his head thoughtfully. "Well, that's only natural. But remember, man's world is different. They have their own laws, and they may not understand you as we do." "I know," Mowgli said, "but I need to see it for myself." That evening, Mowgli sat with the wolves under the light of the full moon. He told them of his desire to visit the man village, and though some were hesitant, they understood his need to explore. "You will always be one of us, Mowgli," Akela said, "no matter where your path takes you." Gray Brother nuzzled Mowgli's hand. and we'll be here waiting for you." Their words filled Mowgli with both excitement and sadness. He loved his jungle family, but he couldn't ignore the call of the world beyond. The next morning, Mowgli set out toward the village, accompanied by Baloo and Bagheera. As they walked, the jungle seemed to whisper its farewells. The trees swayed gently, the birds sang, and the river sparkled in the sunlight. At the edge of the forest, Mowgli turned to his friends. "Thank you," he said, his voice steady, "for everything you've taught me." "You are wise beyond your years, little brother," Bagheera said. "Remember what you've learned here. It will guide you wherever you go." "And don't forget to visit," Baloo added with a chuckle. Mowgli smiled, his heart full of gratitude. He stepped forward, crossing the invisible boundary between the jungle and the village. The villagers were curious about the strange boy who appeared from the forest. His wild, untamed appearance and confident demeanor set him apart, but they soon saw the kindness in his eyes and the strength in his heart. An older woman, with a face lined by years of laughter and hard work, approached Mowgli. "You've been living in the jungle, haven't you?" she asked gently.
Yes, Mowgli replied. It's my home.
"Well, you're welcome here," she said with a smile. "But don't forget where you came from." Life in the village was very different from the jungle. Mowgli learned new skills, like tending crops and working with tools, but he often found himself longing for the freedom of the forest. One evening, as he sat outside watching the stars, he heard a familiar sound, the howl of the wolves. It was Gray Brother, calling to him from the edge of the jungle. Mowgli's heart leapt with joy. He ran to the forest, where his wolf brother waited. "I've missed you," Mowgli said, embracing Gray Brother. "And we've missed you," Gray Brother replied. "The jungle is not the same without you." From that night on, Mowgli found a way to balance both worlds. He spent his days learning the ways of men, and his evenings running with the wolves and exploring the jungle. The villagers came to accept Mowgli's unique nature. They saw him as a bridge between their world and the mysterious forest that surrounded them. Mowgli, meanwhile, grew wiser and stronger, his heart full of love for both his jungle family and the people of the village. One day, as he sat by the river with Baloo and Bagheera, Mowgli reflected on his journey. "I've learned so much," he said. "The jungle taught me how to survive and be brave, and the village has shown me how to create and build." Bagheera nodded. "You are a rare soul, Mowgli. Few can walk in two worlds as you do." Baloo grinned. "And don't forget, little cub, the jungle will always be here for you." As the sun set, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, Mowgli felt a deep sense of peace. He knew that no matter where his path led, he would carry the lessons of the jungle with him. And as the stars appeared one by one, he whispered a silent promise to himself and his family. I will always protect this jungle, my first home. The jungle, with its wild beauty and unbreakable bonds, would forever be a part of him.